It's the Executive Council meeting of September 25 to 25. There are no regrets. The gang's all here. We feel free to stand or move anytime you want. We will have the approval of the agenda unless, can we have the approval of the agenda? So moved by Glenn Digdon.
Second.
Second by Warden Albright. All in favor?
Aye.
If there's any conflict of interest, you can declare it now or when you discover you are in conflict. We have a presentation. Gloria Banks is here from Doan Grant Thornton. Gloria?
Thank you very much. So I actually have already met with your audit committee, and we've been through the financial statements in detail, both the non-consolidated financial statements and the consolidated statements. And I know that your CAO is going to do a little presentation on the non-consolidated later, so I'm just going to do your consolidated. And so that everybody would have got it mailed out to them today in PDF. There are a couple of paper copies if anybody wanted a paper one. So I'll just remind you that we do the non-consolidated financial statements because the municipality has to file a financial information return. And it gives a very detailed breakdown of the operations of your operating fund, your capital fund, and your reserves. But then we have to take that and we add it together with your proportionate share of the controlled entities. So that would be the Mariner Center Management Authority, the Mariner Center Health and Wellness Fund, the Yarmouth Area Industrial Commission, the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation, the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Management Authority, and Yarmouth and the Canadian Shores Tourist Association. So together with the Municipality of Yarmouth and the Town of Yarmouth, you control those entities. So in these consolidated statements for reporting purposes, we pick up your share of their operations. Pardon me. So that's what's included in these. And so I'm going to go to the page that says Independent Auditors Report. Pardon me. I'm good. So this is a clean audit opinion. We didn't find anything while we were doing our audit which would cause us to have to modify the wording in the report. Pardon me. Or, pardon me, sorry about that. Restrict its use or have any changes associated with it. So the first paragraph is just the introduction. So these are the statements for March 31st, 2025. And then the official opinion is the second little one, which says, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements presents fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality of the District of Argyle as at March 31st, 2025, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. So that's our official opinion. Then the next section is called a basis for opinion. So on top of making sure that your statements are in accordance with the standards, we have to follow auditing standards, and they're prescribed by Canadian Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. And so we have to make sure that we've properly planned and implemented our audit in accordance with those standards. And we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. There's a section on responsibility of management and those charged with governance. And so it is management's responsibility to set a system of internal controls that operates throughout the year to accumulate the financial data to make sure that it's being properly recorded. Their goal is to make sure that their daily accounting is free of material misstatements. Also, they have a responsibility to do what we call a lookout test. So we call it a going concern assumption, that these financial statements are under the assumption that you will continue into the future, which of course you will, but management does that lookout test. It's a 12-month test. And then those charged with governance, so audit committee and ultimately U.S. Council, are responsible for oversight of those processes. So not the day-to-day bookkeeping, but just to make sure that you're comfortable that management's doing the processes that are appropriate in the circumstances. Okay? Then the next page from that is the auditor's responsibility. And so our goal and our main objective is to obtain reasonable assurance that these financial statements are free of material misstatements. And so reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not 100% guarantee that there might not still be an error in these financial statements. And so in order to get that risk as low as possible, we do these items that are in these bulleted points. So in the planning stages of the audit, we look and say, where is there a risk that there could potentially be a material error in your financial statements? And we audit all material balances, but we spend more time auditing those areas that potentially could have errors associated with them. Then we have to look at your internal control systems. We don't have to give you an opinion on them, but we have to understand how they operate so we know where the financial data came from. And then we also look at your accounting policies and any estimates that you might have. We want to make sure that your accounting policies are in accordance with public sector accounting standards, and the ones that you've chosen you are following on a regular basis. We also have to conclude if we agree with management's assessment of that going concern assumption, which we do. We evaluate the overall presentation, so I'm really only going to go over the first 3 or 4 pages of financial information, but then there's lots of pages of notes and disclosures. So we have to make sure that taken together as a whole, the financial statements are appropriate in the circumstances. As well, because you do bring in your share of all of those controlled entities, we have to make sure that those entities were properly audited as well. And so we make sure that we've got proper procedures in place to be sure of those items. And then we're required to communicate both pre the audit, so we would have met with your audit committee before we started the audit, and after the audit, and then ultimately here this evening with council. And so dated today, hopefully they'll be approved when we're done. So again, that is a clean audit opinion. Okay. The next page is management's responsibility for financial reporting. So under public sector accounting standards, your management team, which in this case is your warden and your CAO, take responsibility for these financial statements in writing. And so that's the page that they go through and sign. Okay, so then on page 4, this is the first page of financial information. We call it a statement of operations. So this tells the story of how your year went. These are the revenues that you generated and the expenditures that you made, showing your ending balance at the end of the year. And so you can see that we have a budget column for 2025, an actual column for 2025, and an actual column for 2024. If we just look at the top section in terms of our revenues, your original budget, which includes the budget of all of your controlled entities as well, not just the municipality, but all of those controlled entities, you had set your budget at $16,061,934. You came in at an actual of $16,512,673, and the prior year was $12,847,882. So in actual fact, you're a little bit higher than your budget, but you're actually very close. On a $16 million budget, don't you have a difference of $450? When you bring in all of those controlled entities, revenue is usually one of the harder things to budget for. So really good result from that perspective. And then you've grown by $3.6 million over the prior year. A couple big things that are driving that. So at the top, the first number, of course, is your tax revenue. And you can see the tax revenue has grown over the prior year a little over $600,000. So your tax rate did not change from fiscal 2024 to fiscal 2025. It remained consistent both residential and commercial. So that increase in that tax number is driven solely by your increase in your assessments year over year. There's a whole bunch of other things in there as well, like deed transfer tax. You're still doing really good with deed transfer tax, and your results are higher than your budget for that number as well. But again, the growth is purely from your increases in your assessments. If we just skip down 2 lines, other revenue from own sources, which is also a large number, you ended up this year at $3,062,000, and last year was $1,883,000. And so we have included a note at the back that has a little bit more detail in it, but it has grown by $1.2 million. And there's a couple of things that would be included in what we call other. You've brought in your share of the operations of the Mariners Center Health and Wellness Fund, and they generated quite a bit of donations this year, so you recognize your proportionate share of those donations. As well, the Mariners Center itself had a really large donation this year in 2 pieces for the Jumpstart Court. The municipalities together paid for the land development and donated that asset to them, and then the Canadian Tire Foundation donated the funds for the court and all the equipment associated with it. So that's a little over $1 million as well that they generated in donated assets, I guess we'd call it. So those 2 items are included in this $3 million. That's why we see that big increase year over year. And then if we go down 2 more to conditional transfers from federal and provincial governments, this is one that's going to vary year over year because this is where the grants come in. So when you're doing a project, whether it's capital or otherwise, the money that comes in comes from grants, and you recognize those grants as you spend them, whether you buy a capital asset or whether you're paying for repairs or whatever the grant related to. And so you can see you're really close on your budget, but there's a really big increase over the prior year by $1.7 million. So I'll just share with you some of the larger items that are included in that $4.2 million this year. The remainder for your track and field, you spent about $1.6 million on the new track and field, and so you would brought in the revenue that you got for funding that project. You also spent some of your Sustainable Services Growth Fund. You'll recall that had an extension till the end of March 2026 to spend it, but you've been spending some each year. And then also you would have had work on two of your sewer systems, East Pubnico and the Tusket. And so that would have had revenue coming in associated with that as well. But then another big piece is also your pickup of the Mariner Center expansion. So at the Mariner Center Management Authority itself, it had large grants that it brought in this year to spend on the expansion that they had done to date. So again, you pick up your share of that grant revenue as well. So those are the main items, the big items that cause the increase in your grant revenue. The rest of your categories are pretty close to your budget and not significantly different from the prior year from a revenue perspective. So again, you grew your revenue by $3.6 million this year. On the expenditure side, your expenditure budget was $10,896,811. Your actual is $11,734,168, and last year was $10,887,304. So you're about $837,000 higher than your budget, and you're up $846,000 from the prior year. So they kind of coincide. There's a couple of things there. There aren't any really large items in general government services, protective services, or transportation, like really big individual items. But some of the things that would have gone into that is last year, fiscal 2025 was an election year. So all of your election costs are included in your general government services. There would have been cost of living increases in your employee salaries. Again, nothing really large, but enough to grow them a little bit. And in protective services, every year the cost of your policing contract goes up, so there's a little bit of an increase there. And then transportation and the other ones are actually very close to the prior year in your budget. So the one with the biggest change is under recreation and cultural services. You had budgeted $1,931,000, came in at $2,514,000, and last year was $1,950,000. So here's where we see your contribution towards the Jumpstart project. So you would have given your share, I think it was about $185,000 you contributed to that project. So wouldn't have been known at the beginning of the year when you set your budget. It was a project that came up in the middle of the year. So that wouldn't have been in your budget or in the prior year. And then also from just the Mariner Center's perspective itself, their operations have increased, their revenues are up, but so are their expenses. So they had larger costs associated with their power. Last year they were underbilled for some of their power, so this year they're getting back to normal and paying their what's supposed to be billed. The one good thing about it, Nova Scotia Power didn't actually come back and make them make up the difference because they had billed them incorrectly. So, but that's why last year's would have been low. They had additional costs for salaries. They also had additional costs for repairs and maintenance, and they also did a feasibility study this year. So their expenses were all up. And the reason that we're a little bit different from our budget to our actual is because the Mariner Center doesn't actually do a budget for their, what we call amortization, that depreciating, declining balance of their assets, because that's included in their capital fund, which they don't have a budget for. They only have a budget for their operating fund. So that's why we're a little bit higher on the budget category. Again, still very good results. So your annual surplus before any unusual items was planned at $5,165,000. You came in at $4,778,000, and last year was $1,960,000. So in those years where you're bringing in your capital grants to purchase capital items, we're always going to see a bigger kind of net number here, annual surplus. And let's say next year you don't do any projects, well, then it's going to go back down to looking more like the years before. So it's always kind of going to go like this in years when you're doing capital. And actually next year's not a good example because there will be big capital next year too. So, but sometime maybe in the future. So that's a very strong result. You started your year with an accumulated surplus of $27,528,949. We add in this year's surplus of $4,778,505, and you end your year at $32,307,454. Okay, and that number ties in when we turn over to the next page 5, which is the statement of financial position. That number is the same number at the bottom. The two pages have to be tied together, I guess you'll say. So page 5 is called a consolidated statement of financial position. So these are your assets and your liabilities. And the way public sector accounting standards go, we segregate financial assets at the top. These are assets that are readily convertible to cash that you can use to pay your liabilities. We always put non-financial assets down at the bottom because your infrastructure costs, your building, your equipment, you're not going to sell them to generate cash to pay your bills. So they've always put them at the bottom of the page so that you're not confused about what you have available to spend. So you can see that the first item is called restricted cash, just to remind you that that is the tax sale surplus account. So when you've gone to tax sale and you've got more than what was owed to you in the tax receivable, it sits in that account for that 20 years until you can take it out after 20 years. Unrestricted, so that's your cash added together with all of the controlled entities, has gone up significantly. It has $15,327,000 in it now. It was $12,828,000, so it's grown by $2.5 million over the prior year. And a couple of things about that number. You have to keep in mind that of that $15.3 million, $5 million of it is already spoken for because it's money you've been given in advance that you're going to spend next year on projects. So you don't have the entire $15 million available. You only have $10 million really available. And of that portion, $11 million is the municipalities. The rest comes in from the subsidiaries. And the reason why it is significantly higher this year is because at the end of March, the Mariner Centre had already received the 2 grants from the province. They gave it to them up front, the entire $7 million they had in their bank account at the end of the year. And again, you're picking up your share of that. So that's why it's higher this year. That will go down in the future too. Your tax receivable balance has grown a little bit over the prior year, but considering how much your assessments went up, it didn't grow up as nearly as much. And one of the tests you'll remember in your house that you get for your indicators is that they like your tax receivable to be less than 10% of your levy, and you're about 5%. So you're well below that indicator. So your taxes receivable are in a good position. Due from provincial governments and its agencies, last year was $677,000. This year it's only $100,000. So last year you were in the middle of a couple of projects, so there was a receivable for a part of the capital project last year. This year that, of course, isn't happening. And then if we go down to what we call other receivables, this year it's $423,000. Last year it was $1,071,000. So this brings in all of the subsidiaries as well. But if you remember last year this time, you had loaned money to the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Management Authority for their build of their cell. And so they've paid you back during this year. So that's the reason that the balance was quite a bit higher last year, because they owed you that full amount of the loan that you had given them. And your other categories are fairly consistent. So you end the year at March 31st with financial assets of $17,906,000. On the liability side, there isn't anything too significantly different. Your deferred revenue is a little bit lower than last year, but it's still a big number. So last year would have also contained the amount for the track and field. You did get the money ahead of time, and you only spent it this year, so it's coming down. But in terms of the types of items that are included in your deferred revenue, obviously your Canada Community Building Fund, formerly gas tax. So you still have $385,000 available in that program. Also this year, closer to the end of the year, you got funding from the Growth and Renewal Infrastructure. Is that the right name? Growth and Renewal Infrastructure, the GRID. So you did get $740,000 from them as well that you'll use in a project on a go-forward basis. You still have some amounts with the Tuscot Sewer, the East Pubnico Tank, and your Sustainable Services Growth Fund. Still have money that will carry forward into next year, and also a large portion from the Mariner Centre, their deferred revenue as well. So that's what's in that $4.9 million. And then really, until we get down to the last item, which we call long-term debt, It did increase over the prior year. It looks like a decrease because you did make your principal payment, but you picked up your share of the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Management Authority. They actually went out and got external debt during the year to pay you back. So now they have an official long-term debt, and so that picks up your share of their debt. But there was no new debt issued from the municipality during the year. So your total liabilities are $10,180,492, and that gives you a net financial asset position of $7,725,686. That number has grown $1.9 million over the prior year, and that is a very strong position to be. That means if you had to, you could pay out all of your liabilities with your financial assets and still have left over $7 million. So it's very strong. For the non-financial assets, so those items below the line, we have a category this year that's a bit larger. We call it work in process, and that's the expansion project in the Mariner Center. Until the building is done and can be divided into its categories, it's called work in progress. So that's your share of their costs to date. Your tangible capital assets have grown over the prior year, $39,469,000 in cost, and the prior year was $36,745,000. Again, the items that you would have capitalized is the track and field costs, the work that you've done on your sewers so far. There was work done on this building as well during the year, and there was a vehicle purchased. So that would be increasing your capital assets. So your total non-financial assets are $24,581,768. So almost 60% of your accumulated surplus number is sitting in your infrastructure that you've purchased to provide the services to your residents in the future. So that's your statement of financial position, okay? So then we'll just look quickly at page 6 and 7, just because they're still part of the numbers. So page 6 is the statement of changes in that net financial asset position. So that $7.7 million that I mentioned on your balance sheet that was really, really strong. It always starts at the beginning of the year with your annual surplus. And then we will reduce your annual surplus by the acquisition of new tangible capital assets, acquisition of work in process, but then we add back amortization because it's not a cost that you actually had to expend. And so you generated $1,904,000 from those items, and then the change in your prepaid expenses was only $10,000. So in total, you've grown your net financial asset by $1,894,131 over the prior year. Okay, and then page 7 is the consolidated statement of cash flow. This also is a continuity. It starts with your opening balance of your cash and all the things that go in and out of cash all throughout the year. And it starts with your annual surplus. And then we add back those items that are non-cash, depreciation, amortization, and your change in non-cash items. And then we show what you spent on capital. You say the acquisition of your capital assets, work in process. And then financing transactions are your debt. And the net, and you can see 3/4 of the way through the page, is you did increase your cash this year by $2,595,000. You started the year with $13 million in cash, and you end in $16,011,631. The rest are the supporting notes and disclosures. So there were no significant accounting changes from the public sector accounting standards this year. There was no changes in your own internal accounting policies. So your notes will be very similar to the prior year. And as I mentioned, I've already gone over them with the audit committee, so I was just going to do those pages.
So, okay, do we have any questions for Gloria? Seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I should say, the audit went really well. Thank you to your staff. They were very cooperative to our audit team while we were doing the audit, and like I said, I think it went very well this year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to number 6, staff reports. Bear with me for a second here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, number 5, adoption of minutes for September 11, 2025 regular council meeting minutes. There's an attachment. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes will be accepted as circulated. All right, number 6, staff report. This comes monthly. There is the department head report, A. B, there is the clerk's report. And these reports are active and completed projects. And C is the building permit. Basically, they're designed to let council and the public know what's going on in our community. Do we have any questions? Rochelle, Surratt, Councilor Surratt.
Just a couple from the operation, and I know Kyle is not here, but it talks about the overflow controls, the rig cap lift station, which of course there's now signage, and it might even be Councilor Digdon to respond to that, but just to let the public know kind of what that project is about would be helpful, I think, because the signage has gone up.
This is for Glenn, Councilor Digdon.
Yes, I had put it out actually on my Facebook page a little while ago, but the sewer, there's been issues around the sewer pumping station that's at the Red Cap, located around the Red Cap restaurant, and also in the ditch out in front of the credit union for quite a number of years. Our CAO and his staff have been working on it right along and looking to get some monies that may be available to correct some of those problems. They received some funding, and that's what's going to be going on. I see the trucks, the vehicles are there today, and the couple of excavators are there today. So hopefully, chances are by tomorrow or next week, the work will be started, and you won't see, sometimes there is a problem with sludge in the ditch out around the Red Cap or around the credit union especially, and hopefully when all that work is finished, that'll take care of a lot of those problems.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No?
Are you good? Councilor Madden.
Thank you, Deputy. Under the protective services, there's a section there for explore exit 31 Business Park, possibly rezoning and focusing on commercial industrial use. I don't know if I've read this before or not, but I don't know if I could get some clarification on where that is or what's going on there.
Sergio Muse.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just opening up on that section to make sure that I'm at the same place as you here. Under operational services, just trying to find where you are here. All the way down? Oh, protective services, my apologies, yeah.
Yeah.
Wrong place, okay.
Active projects. Under
Explore Business Park, possibly rezoning for okay, so this is, it's not something that has begun or as of yet, apparently. I don't have a lot of information on this, but I think that what I can do is bring that to the attention of Renee, Mr. Jedry, to provide you that information in a more detailed way. There's, I'm not sure if it could be in terms of the business park itself compared to J.E. Hatfield, and I would want to clarify that. So I'm unclear on precisely what that is.
Okay.
So let me get back to you and to council on that, and if residents want to hear about it, I may actually get a text from somebody listening intently, so he may actually be able to answer that question before I'm done.
No, it came up when I was reading about it. That's curious.
Yeah, very early stages at this point. There's obviously not a lot that has occurred there as of yet.
Yep, any information you can send my way, appreciate it.
100%. All of you will receive an update on that.
Thank you.
We're good. Councilor Surratt?
Also in protective services, so again, might be something for Mr. Jedry, but the rural transportation Hope Dollar, I had a resident ask me about that service, and I do see it says pilot project started, and I was wondering if anybody could speak to that, and if not, if we can get some information at some point.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, we will get in more detailed information on that. I know that that work has been ongoing for a number of months now. The pilot project was to take a look at the transportation of the senior safety clients to start, to see if there's a need, how does that demand work? So it's it's a very soft launch, shall I say. So we'll iron it through. I will get a more detailed report from Renee. I know Renee's been working with Cordy at Hope, as well as Amber is also involved in this one.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So is there any more questions for number 6? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to 7, 7-day notice. Repeal Article C6, Public Presentation Policy. There's an attachment. And this is a repeal policy, and I think this is added to our council procedural policy. Am I correct?
That's right.
Yes. So we need a motion to repeal. Motion by Councilor Surratt, seconded by Councilor Madden. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We will go to Section 8. Article A, acceptance of compiled non-consolidated financial statement, March 31st, 2025. So we need a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion.
Was that?
Oh, yes, sorry. Those two things are mixed up. That should be acceptance of audited consolidated.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's just,
No, it's not your fault. It's the agenda. So simply, that should be to accept the statements that were presented in audited form by Gloria Banks.
okay,
Sorry.
okay.
I was confused about that.
So we need a motion to accept that.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
It's moved by Councilor Boudreau, seconded by Councilor Burke. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So 8A,
So that one
That
is
would be
my
yours.
brief, yeah.
Okay.
This is my brief presentation. So I'm not going to go in the detail of the financial information, so I'm just going to repeat what the auditor said. The auditor's responsibility is to audit the compiled financial statements, and by compiled, that means all of our funds put together and all of our subsidiaries put together. So that is the most accurate report to show you where you are, because you own the liabilities and assets of those subsidiary companies. The problem with that is it's very confusing, because you don't operate all of those subsidiary organizations. Some of you only know some of those subsidiaries. So what I want to just take a moment and go through the compiled financial information. You do have it in your email, but the purpose of me presenting this is not the audited statement. This is the statement of you and you only, okay? Being all funds, assets, and liabilities that you control directly, not indirectly. So I start the spiel every year the same way. We use fund accounting. Accountants call that fund accounting. The D is silent. But everybody else calls it fund accounting. And what that means is that we have a multitude of funds that we manage. We have an operating fund. That's your bread and butter. That's what you see on a quarterly basis. Next month, you're going to see the quarterlies to the end of September. That's your profit and loss statement. That's 90% of what you do, okay? And so that's your operating fund. So there's money, there's assets, liabilities, but it's basically that's where your taxes go in and that's where your services come out. You also have an operating reserve fund, and that is strictly for the transfer in or out of surpluses or deficits. So at the end of each year, your operating fund either makes money or it doesn't. It's always made money for at least the last 18 years. And so what is supposed to happen with that surplus is you have to spread that surplus out to your other funds. You have to decide where that money goes, because it doesn't stay in the operating fund. So there's two places it can go. One is by motion of council, which is what I'll talk about later. The second is an automatic transfer. If you do nothing, the entire surplus or deficit goes or comes from the operating reserve. Okay? So, and then the third fund that you have is the capital reserve. So that's the money for capital projects. That's as the title suggests. And so every year where we've had surpluses, every year you might recall, we make decisions every year about, okay, well, if we have a surplus of $500,000, how much of that money goes to the capital reserve? That has to be decided by you as council, and whatever's left, it gets moved into the operating reserve by law. Okay? So that's a summary of the three funds. So I'm just gonna talk about the operation and the fund balances, so that you understand how much equity you have that you control directly, okay? So if you're looking at the statement, it's on page 2, and it outlines the revenues and expenses. I'm not gonna go through the detail. You've already heard most of that, because most of the detail relates to our operation and not the subsidiary. If you wanted to compare the two, you can take a look at, okay, well, actual revenues for us is 8.7 million, but what was it on a consolidated level? What was the difference? So that will tell you what the subsidiaries have provided in terms of revenue or expenditure. So your annual surplus before transfers, and keep in mind, we budget transfers every year. Transfers are meant to pay off debt, they're made to pay off projects, they're meant for the future, okay? Or paying a debt that you incurred in the past. So we budgeted 409,000 surplus. We actually ended up at 880,000. So that is certainly a good year. I mean, that's the kind of news you want to hear. You don't want it to go the other way. And so that was the good news, and some of that was generated by the fact that we didn't have to spend money we thought we did. Every year we budget as conservatively as possible, expecting the worst and planning for the best. So this year, again, we see a surplus, and some of that is the transfer taxes. And there's budgets that we put together that are conservative, and they end up coming better. One year, every year we're wrong, but maybe one year we'll be right. And so some of these things can taper, and your transfer taxes can stabilize or go down. Transfers to own reserves, we basically transferred the amount that we budgeted, essentially. We had a 408,000 budget, and we transferred, in fact, 534,000. That was, again, to pay debt and to go into the capital reserve. So we transferred more into our capital reserve than we expected. And that left us with $346,000, to which that all went to the reserve. Okay? So that's how the fund works, right? So on this accounting, you have to show the fund in detail. In the consolidated, it's all one. It's all one. It's one pocket of money. So that's good news for that particular year. And I mean, a lot of the detail around that was provided either through the year here or at the audit committee in more detail by the auditor. And you're welcome to ask any and all questions. What usually happens with this information is that we put out the audited financial statement, and we put out that information to the public. So the public will be able to see that information and any additional information that we choose to provide. Typically, we provide the budget and the audited statements, as well as the health check that the province of Nova Scotia asks us to do, or does it on our behalf. That tells us how healthy the house is, and you all remember seeing that. So we check our website to make sure that is updated and that it's available. So only a couple of other things I will say is that both the operating reserve and the capital reserve grew in equity or in retained earnings through the year. The capital reserve was at 4.57 million last year. in equity, and it's now at 5.229. So it went up 652,000. That's deliberate. We want to make sure that number is high enough because we know what's coming. We know there's a multi-million-dollar investment in the Mariner Center expansion, as well as other fairly large investments. So it's to set aside, the trick here is to set aside enough money to deal with those things, but not too much and certainly not too little. Too much money set aside is not great for the tax rate, because then your residents are, okay, well, if you're able to save all this money, can we just take the tax rate down? And that should be a consideration every year. It should be. But on the flip side, we also have to think about the future and what the future commitments are. And, 5.2 million may sound like a lot of money, but when you're doing a capital project that's only you doing it, it does not take long for that number to go down. And I think that you've seen that, especially since COVID. So what we try to do as a staff is to make sure other people pay for our project. Other people pay for it, right? So that we can get other funding. So as a great illustration, the Mariner Center will cost $42 million, and your investment is $3 million. That's the kind of project we want to see. So with your $3 million, you were able to, because of all sorts of reasons, because of regional collaboration, because of funding applications to federal government, because of all those things, because of fundraisers themselves, we managed to bring that $3 million up to 42. That's the goal. That would be the hope for that kind of money. You need money to get money, and I've said that before, right? So last bit is the operating reserve. It was at 4.2 million, now is at 4.6 million, so that's an increase of $413,000. That's a healthy reserve. We have not dipped in the reserve in 19 years to pay for a deficit yet. We have dipped into it to pay for certain things, however. So as an example, we have a loan to the Eelbrook Fire Department that will be written off over the course of time, and that had to do with replacing their fire truck. So there were some arrangements made there, as well as contributions recently to les Jeux de l'Acadie, who had money set aside in the reserve for that purpose. So you recently approved a $7,500 contribution. It comes out of that number. So if you put everything together, that means that you have equity or retained earnings or surplus, accumulated surplus over the course of time of approximately, let me get to the right page. Let me skip that page. 9.85 million, but you have debt of you have a long-term debt of 2.5 million. So your surplus is a bit of a moving target, but you're in the $7.2 million range when you put everything together and you pay off or extinguish your long-term debt. That number doesn't include short-term. It doesn't include short-term. So it's a good number to keep in mind, right? 7.2 is a good number to keep in mind. It's far more complicated than that, but a lot of residents want to know how much money you might have set aside, and that would be my answer. So that's as summarized as I can be on the statement. I didn't want to go line by line, but I just wanted for you to understand what it is, what it looks like as us alone, as opposed to seeing consolidated. If there are any questions, I'll take any questions you have, and if not, I don't think it's necessary you accept these because they're not audited statements, but I think it's a good gesture to accept them.
Councilor Foster.
Yes, I have a quick question. It's not that you were talking like an engineer, like an auctioneer, I'm sorry, but I was writing notes and I missed the number on the operating reserves. I know it's 4-point-some million, but I missed the rest of it. Could you repeat that figure?
Of course, through you, Mr. Chair, I was going fast. I did sound like an auctioneer. The number for this year is 4.620 million.
4.62.
Yeah, 4.62 million, and that's up from 4.2 million. I'm rounding. Those are rounded numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Okay, so for 8A, is anybody willing to make a motion to accept this? It is moved by Councillor LeBlanc,
Second.
seconded by Warden Albright. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We will move to 8C, Article C11, Procurement. There's an attachment. And these are, from what I see, amendments, and they're all in red. They're pretty simple. Is anybody willing to make a motion to accept the amendments?
I'll make a motion to accept the amendments to Article C11.
It is moved by Warden Albright. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Burke. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. D, CSAP, Paramba Track and Field Maintenance Agreement. There's an attachment there as well. I'm not certain that we do need a motion here, CEO Muse?
It is not necessary to make a motion, because it's within the procurement authority of myself and the department. However, I think in light of the fact that it's relationship-based with our CSAP and the track and field and the important asset, I think that a motion would be appropriate in this instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is moved by Councillor Madden. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Surratt. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, before you move on, I have an answer to Councillor Madden's question on the exit.
Okay.
So first of all, Mr. Chair, I have to forgive me. When I read it, I thought Tuscan, but that's not what it was. What it was is, see, on our long-term strategic plan, we did indicate the idea that we would investigate or pursue the potential of a business park on the Pubnico exit. So that's what that is in reference to. By saying it's early is an extraordinary understatement. This is basically, okay, Renee and I talked strategy, and we know that this was on the long-term strategic plan, and so how do we get this going? So that is essentially what that is. It is to investigate whether or not there's an appetite, an interest, what might have to happen in that area for that to be a reality. It was certainly something that was raised when because we were doing a lot of work in the Tuscan area, and we actually have two major intersections, and the second one is in Pubnico, and I know that there were some talks at some point, probably 6 or 7 years ago, about potential businesses arriving at the Pubnico head exit. So that is what that is. And so as we get more information, certainly we will share it, but right now it's very little. It's just looking at a piece of paper and saying, okay, what is this about? Secondly, on the, Renee has indicated that he will be providing a full report on the Hope question by email to council by tomorrow. Okay? Sorry for interrupting your agenda.
Oh, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, so we will move on then to 8E, first reading bylaw X22 civil emergency planning repealed as an attachment. I think this is being moved to Remo, am I correct? So there's no longer need for this when we need a motion to repeal. No, actually it's the first reading, a motion for the first reading.
I'll move that.
Moved by Warden Albright, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 8F, first reading bylaw X34 municipal emergency measures repealed. There's an attachment, it's very similar to the last motion or reading. It is being repealed and it is being moved to Remo. Do we have a motion on that one? It was motioned by Councillor Surratt and seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. G, no exemption request from Quality Concrete. There are 4 attachments here. This is in my district, so I will give you, I mean, the attachments are very, very well written and explain most of everything what's going on. There's one little difference or one, maybe a heads up. The residents, I've been talking to some of them that have been complaining. They understand the situation, and I think they're willing to accept it. However, Quality Concrete is going to do their best to mitigate any noise that's coming from them. They've actually suggested that they maybe start at 5 o'clock rather than 4. That would be a little easier because he would end at 9 o'clock. It's more within the daylight hours than starting at 5. Residents understand that this project is too big to stop. It's also when you start pouring cement, from what I understand, it has to go continuously till it's done. There's no stopping it. So it's a big project, and unfortunately, sometimes residents have to put up with a little bit of extra noise, but hopefully Quality Concrete will be able to remedy that. So the motion is to give an exemption and extend those hours. And again, it mentions 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, but I'm guessing that it'll be a little bit better than that. So we need a motion for an exemption. Is anybody willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. And I looked it over. Yeah, I'll make the motion first, yep.
Councillor Dicton made the motion, Warden Albright seconded. All right.
Thank you. And what they're actually asking for an exemption, they're not asking for a whole lot when you add up the amount of hours that they're asking for. And yes, there's going to be some noise at the same time, but I look at that as there's also going to be growth in our municipality, which is a great thing. And I know sometimes when we stay downtown Halifax at some of the motels at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, you start hearing tractor trailers bouncing by and all that, especially down around Water Street and that. So I think it's, I'm supporting it.
Yeah, and this is also temporary.
That's
It's
right.
only for this fall. If something happens that they have to pour a few in the spring, they will have to reapply for an exemption.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
So, any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 8H, public wharf signage as an attachment, and this is for Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Deputy. Yes, I've been approached by residents. There's a wharf, we probably all know about it. I call it Chat Awesome, being from the village. It's currently used a lot by Dion's Oyster Farm. And people are wondering if it's not a public wharf, and I'm pretty sure it is, but there's no signage saying so. So I don't know if my motion is to ask the public, I call it TIR still, but, and I don't know if that's where we go to put a sign up, but I'd like to make a motion that we get the right authority to put a sign up saying that there is a public wharf and that the public can use it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder, Councillor Digdon. Any questions? Pardon me? Councillor Bork.
Thank you, through you. So this is a public wharf, and who owns the wharf? Is it the municipality, or is it a federal wharf, or provincial? It's a provincial wharf.
I have no idea who owns the wharf. Provincial.
Okay. So, and my other question is, how many other of these wharfs do we have in our municipality?
That is a good question. I would guess that.
Because I'm asking that question because if we put one sign there, we have to put signs at the other wharfs as well. So if you do for one, you do for the others.
Okay.
I can address the question on how many wharfs.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, I'm not a wharf expert here, so. I'll just go by communities, the ones that I'm aware of that are public. And when I say public wharf, there's a variety of public, right? It can be public being owned by a nonprofit society, it can be public that's owned by federal or provincial. So I'm gonna exclude the wharves that have boats on them that are harbor, usually federally regulated. We're not gonna talk about those because those are a kind of a different beast. So what we're talking about is more like smaller community wharves. Anselm Wharf is in Lower Eelbrook. It's owned by the province of Nova Scotia. There is a wharf in Eelbrook as well, Eve Bourque Wharf.
Eve Joe Bork, yes.
Eve Joe J. Bourque Wharf. That is on the other side of the bridge. It's I'm from the area, so I'm like, it's next door to Richard Babin's house, but that doesn't really mean anything to anyone. But it's owned by a society of that same name, and fairly inactive at this time, but had been active maybe 10, 15 years ago. We do have wharves that are owned, like Hubbard's Point. The community of Hubbard's Point actually owned at one point 2 wharves, one of which was sold. The Plymouth Wharf used to be nonprofit. It's been sold, but there's still, I believe they still own the wharf at Hubbard's Point. And I know that it was used for, kayak fishing and access to the water, that like a lot of local smaller fishermen wanted access to the sea. I think there are some smaller ones there. Those are the ones I know for sure. But of those that I've mentioned, there's only one that's provincially owned, and it's the one in question. The others are nonprofit that are typically looking at grants or other funds. Oh, sorry, I missed one. I believe the Rocco Point Wharf is also owned by a nonprofit. I believe our former warden actually was part of fundraising for that wharf. It was a pretty big job. So we have, a variety of different types of public wharves. There are more. I'm just less familiar with those. You asked the question, there are some, and I'm sure I've missed some in that answer.
Thank you. So can I ask another question? So just to continue, so if we put a sign, that wharf, I think we should be putting signs at other wharfs, because we're going to start, it's going to be a domino effect. So I think I would suggest to put signs at all public wharfs, if that's the case.
Councilor LeBlanc.
Thank you. Actually, that was exactly what I was going to indicate, was that, if we're going to write a letter to,
Public Works.
what are they now?
Public Works.
Public Works, thank you. Regarding one, it goes back to things that we do bring to council, and we're asking for individual things that really, a lot of times could encompass the whole of Argyle. So instead of asking for, hey, can we do this for this one, we really should be looking at maybe, hey, maybe we should ask the request to put signs at all of them. And so that's exactly what I was going to indicate, was that if we are going to be proceeding with that motion, maybe that motion can be changed to look at, if we are going to be doing something, then to request that they be done at all the wharfs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Digdon.
Thank you very much. Both of the councillors prior pretty well had the questions I had marked down here. And I'm just, actually, we won't, all we can do is ask, and if they want to put signage on those wharfs. And I'd be wondering, Councillor Madden, if I may, through you, sir, if you'd be willing to add that in your motion, that they look at all public wharfs that they see fit to put signage on.
Yes, Deputy, I have no problem with that. This particular wharf is quite a ways from the main road, where the other wharfs, like the Rocco Point, Abrams River, Hubbard's Point, Miros Hill, are very visible when you go by them. So that's the only reason I mentioned this one. But by all means, I would change my motion to all public wharfs signage, if so.
Okay, good, because, thank you, because if he wasn't gonna Although I second that, I was gonna vote against it if it wasn't gonna go that way. So, yeah, if you wanna go, if you'll do that, I'll
Yeah,
definitely,
I'll change my motion to put signage at all public wharfs,
okay,
Provincially owned.
provincially owned, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Foster first.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of questions. Councillor Madden just stole my thunder. If you drive to the end of Abrams River, you can't miss the wharf. It's right there. If you drive to the end of Morris Island, you can't miss the wharf because you're on the wharf. In fact, there's lots of people on their way to Halifax who end up on the wharf in Morris Island because they think they're following the lighthouse route. So the wharf in Hubbard's Point has a sign that says Wharf Road, and I'm quite sure it was erected by the municipality. The one in Amiros Hill, it says Chemin de la Bloc-in. I don't have a clue where this enseigne is in Eelbrook. I wouldn't know how to get to it. I see Councillor Madden's point. I have no idea where it is. I wouldn't know how to get there. So, and there are some wharves that at one point in time were provincially owned by the Nova Scotia Department of Lands and Forests. That was the case for Amiros Hill. That was the case for Abrams River. In fact, that's one of the reasons that those wharves didn't get torn down. Number of years ago, about, I would say in the late 1990s, the federal government was divesting themselves of all these DFO wharves. If the community was prepared to take them over, they would give them a small amount of money, the amount of money that it would cost to remove the wharves and haul them away. And if a community showed interest in taking over, they were able to do so, but they were only given a small amount of money. That's why the wharf in Upper Wedgeport disappeared, because the community was not able to come together in an effort to save it and form a nonprofit society. That's why the wharf in Muses Point was torn down by DFO and hauled away. And the rocks were used to enhance the breakwater in Lower Surretts Island. Most of the wharves in my district are still owned by Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Again, I don't know if the provincial government still owns Amiros Hill and Abrams River or not. But, and then there's a number of smaller, just abandoned wharves that were built through make-work projects in 1902, and they were not in the books of small craft harbors, and they're just left there deteriorating. The fenders have rotted away. They're basically stone walls. There's a few of those right here in Tuscan. So, I mean, where do you draw the line? Do we put a sign to indicate Lion Hatfield's Wharf that's no longer in use? Do we put a sign to mark the little wharf that's down by the Hanging Oak Antique Shop? There's these small, on the road where our CAO lives, if you drive by and you look toward the water, there are several wharves there, stonemason wharves. And who owns them? Probably the property owners by now. I think that's what happened to them, is that they reverted back to the landowner. There were a ton of these wharves that were built when Laurier was prime minister, and they were make-work projects because there was an economic, not depression, but recession at the time. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
All right, thank you, Councillor Foster. Warden Albright.
I think, thank you for that little history lesson, Councillor Foster. I think you make a good point, though. Where do we draw the line? There are lots of little wharves. There are bigger wharves. There are tons of wharves in our municipality. Through you, Mr. Chair, could I ask Councillor Madden a clarifying question about this? Councillor Madden, did you have a lot of people coming to you about this wharf? Because it's my understanding, at first I didn't know which wharf this was, but then when I did a little bit more digging, this is the wharf that Nolan Dion uses for his aquaculture business. It's the wharf that he has invested some money into, that we've invested money into as well for future aquaculture development. So I'm just wondering, how many people contacted you? Was it a big crowd of people? Oh, sorry.
Thank you for your question. It's the normal crowd that you have in the area of the ARA. But prior to that, before I was counselor, I had some questions about hunting, if you could do some hunting there, if they could use it. I said, as far as I know, it's public, but I wasn't sure at the time. So I don't think it's a bad idea to put signage. If it's a public wharf, let's let people know it's for use.
And can I ask another question? Sure. What was their motivation for wanting a sign?
That I can't answer.
Okay. So for those reasons, I won't support the motion, because I appreciate your honesty and your transparency on this. The fact that the ARA is asking for a public wharf sign at that wharf where they are using for business, where we have invested in as well, in order to continuously grow the industry. I'm not sure what the motivation is, and I don't feel comfortable approving that, because I am uncertain how many other wharves, how many people, how many residents would actually want signage around wharves that may be near their properties. We don't know. We have a group who is asking this from their counselor, who has been very vocal about not being happy with us about aquaculture development. So that's why I question the motivation. So for that reason, I will not support this motion. Thank you.
CEO Muse.
Sorry.
Again, just on the question of ownership, the motion, just for clarity here, if the motion is on provincial wharves, so the request is to ask TIR to put signage up for the wharves that they own. So I know I mentioned all sorts of different ownerships. It is not for those wharves at all. It is for only the wharves that they own. And I will say that some of these wharves are very old. They may not have great records on whether they own it or not, some of them. And in this case, it was a very tough case. I recall at the time, like, who owns it. The road going to that wharf is also owned by the province of Nova Scotia, but it is an unmaintained road, Class K or maybe worse. So I just wanted to clarify that on that motion, it is only on provincial wharves that we would act upon if it is a favorable vote. It will go to TIR for only those wharves.
Thank you, CEO. Councilor Boudreau.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. After hearing Nicole's, what she just said, that the Municipality of Argyle funded that wharf, I'm going to support what Nicole's doing, and I'm going to support the motion as well.
So, thank you. I have a question. I'm wondering what the governance of these provincial wharf is. For instance, the major wharfs that you tie your lobster boat to, there's a local governance group, and you have to pay wharfage. There's a rhyme and sense to these wharfs. I'm wondering if there's a rhyme and sense to the wharf in question. I don't want to see disruption, but at the same time, we cannot, if it's public, we cannot say, you're not allowed there. But I do understand that there can be some form of disruption. And that's why I think maybe we should look into this and see what the governance of such a wharf is. From what I understand in the past, these small wharfs, you would come, load and unload, and once your business was done, you move. But and business usually came before pleasure. I've seen that in other wharfs before. And I think this is something we should look at before we go a little too far with this. Warden Albright.
If I may.
Yes.
If I may, a second time. I'm just not comfortable at this time. We have, I think it was in 2015 that a request came to us to help improve that wharf because it was pretty dilapidated and it was in really rough condition. And I remember Nolan coming to us asking, and it wasn't, you know, there were rumors that we had put money into a wharf for Nolan. But I remember the conversation at the time, and it was about, we were looking at growing aquaculture then. It's not, it hasn't just been in the last 2 or 3 years. It was way back then. So I know that Mr. Dion put money in himself into that wharf because he knew he needed it for his business. And we put a small amount in as well to help support future growth. Because we did have another farmer who was looking into growing aquaculture. So that was the reason we did that. I just don't feel comfortable saying, yes, let's put signage up at every single public wharf or whatever wharves, because we don't know that everybody else wants that. We just have this one group who has been known to disrupt, I'm just going to be honest, wanting a public sign at a business that they've created some disruption with. So that is, for those reasons, I will not support this. I'm not saying that I'd never support it, but currently the way it stands, not understanding the motivation, I'm not going to support it.
Thank you, Warden. CEO Muse.
There was a question on, there's two issues. One is a question on what's the governance associated with this wharf, and to the best of my knowledge, there isn't provincial or community governance associated with that wharf. It is a public wharf owned by the province of Nova Scotia, and its use would rest in the hands of the province. I mean, the province would be as the owner, and under normal circumstances, they typically would have some guidance, rules, or regulations that they might have generally on the wharf. So in terms of governance, we're not, I don't want to conflate the issue. So the issue is whether we ask TIR for a sign. It's not to ask TIR or to even be in the position where we could control access to that. It's not us. That's not us, right? That we don't have that. That we contributed towards it to make it a viable wharf, because prior to that, it certainly was not. That certainly happened. It was a community project that occurred. So TIR may not agree, right? So on this, the TIR might say, that's a big fat negative, but because it's up to them to put the signage, right? It's their decision. So that's the motion. I just want to clarify that. In terms of governance, I don't have a great answer there, because last I saw, there wasn't really significant governance. The province really didn't have a whole lot going on, didn't have a whole lot of fiscal interest in it at the time.
I am trying to prevent a fire. If there's no governance, I can pitch a tent on the top of the wharf. And then it goes to the courts or wherever it has to go. And I'm just wondering if we can get information on how a public wharf owned by the province is actually governed.
Yeah.
That's my question.
I can certainly obtain that information for you. If that's the will of council, I can certainly do that, outside of this motion.
Do we have any more questions? Councillor Burke.
So, let me see, how am I going to say this? So, before I would agree, maybe we should know what the governance of that wharf is. If the province wants a sign at that wharf, they can put one if they want to put one. So if they're governing the wharf, and if people are going to start going there because they know it's a public wharf, it's going to be advertised, right? So if you put a sign there, everybody's going to, it's a public wharf. You can't stop no one there. So who's going to control who's at that wharf at all times, like any other, like the federal government wharfs? Everybody pays a fee to be at the wharf, to take care of the wharf, right? So I'd rather have more information on the governance of how that would work. If you're gonna make it a public, to the public, I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly, but, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Councilor Digdon.
Thank you. Talking about preventing the fire. It's, we used to sit around this room as a team. We used to operate as a team. And yes, every decision we made may have not always been right, but we didn't, in the last 8 years anyway, or 7 years, I haven't had as much, well, I haven't had no flack. There's no saying I haven't. I haven't had one bit of flack over what's going on with the ADA. I've had some people, and I, you know, I guess maybe assuming that maybe some of this is where this came from. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. So the only thing I'm trying to do right now, if it is a public wharf, and it is for the public, although Nolan Dion's Oyster Farm may be using it quite a bit, and I think that's a great thing if it's being used. There's no saying it's not, because we've got some little wharfs around that there's anybody hardly ever using them. And so that's the reason why I seconded the motion, to be truthful with you, because I feel as though if I didn't second it, somebody would give us some flack over this as well. I don't know, you never know. I know since a lot of this ADA stuff has went on, one thing, if it was your numbers for people watching and all that, it was like a lot of the big shows, we'd be right up there with some of them, because our numbers have definitely grown. But I guess as far as the governance and all that, we can't control that right now. If only thing we're asking for, or maybe asking for, is a sign to say it's a public wharf. If it is a public wharf, I don't think, I can't say, well, it's a public wharf, but it's used by a certain group solely for their purpose. Because I don't think as a council, then that would be right for us to do that to our public that may want to use it someday. I know this sign, some people may be hoping that the usage increases, maybe, and makes it hard maybe for somebody else to use it. But with that, there's rules and regulations on a wharf as well. And that, so the only thing, I will still support it. I seconded the motion. If it is a public wharf, I guess then we can't say or I don't think we can say as a council, well, it's public, but at the same time, it's for one person to use. Whether or not they ever want to put that sign up or not, that'll be totally up to them to put that sign up. If they don't put it up and it comes back before, if it's their wharf and it comes back before council for us to put it up, no, I'm not gonna go for that, because it's not our wharf to begin with. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Can we hear the motion again because of all the discussion?
Okay.
What is the proposed wording of the motion?
The proposed wording as amended, because it was amended, it is moved by Councillor Malcolm Madden, seconded by Councillor Glenn Digdon, to write a letter to the Department of Public Works to erect signs and identifying the location of all public wharves provincially owned in the Municipality of Argyle.
Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? So motion carried. Before I move on, Councillor Muse, CAO Muse, can we get, or try to get some information on governance of such a
Yeah,
wharf?
yes. I don't require a motion for that. I'll take that as I sense that everybody wants to know whether there are any rules or regulations. A passing of this motion means that we're asking for a sign for a public wharf, a wharf that is public, that we do not own. The TIR will then decide whether or not it's appropriate for a sign to be erected for their property. We've had requests of signage before that were rejected. I recall, there's a road inside of another road, and they don't want to put a sign because it's confusing for 911 purposes. There's all sorts of reasons why somebody may not want to put a sign. But the request is for a sign, and I just want to be very clear. It doesn't change the nature of the wharf. The wharf is a public wharf, and it is a provincially owned wharf. And I think it's important for everyone to understand what that means and what the limitations of that might mean. So I will take away the governance question, ask the appropriate questions at TIR to see if there's any general rules and regulations. I can tell you there isn't a committee or anything like that monitors that. I don't, to the best of my knowledge. Whether that's something that they want or need in the future, that's up to the province, but I will ask.
I will just add that there's a common sense and there's common courtesy in these wharfs. I'm aware of many of them, but I was only basically lived next to Abrams River Wharf, and it was used commercially for mossing, for seaweed, and usually people make way for that business.
Of course.
Always, it's
Yeah.
common sense.
And
And I'm saying that as long as that happens, and we got no control in a sense because it is provincially owned. But those are my concerns, that this common courtesy continues. Thank you very much.
just on that, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we'll just go with that. That'll be good. It's good. You know, we've got about 18 titles. We're going to go with that
Glad
one.
I'm not the only one who makes mistakes.
So, just on that issue, the reason why the municipality invested money in that wharf was because it was owned by the province of Nova Scotia. We actually cannot invest in a private wharf. We can't do it. It's not legal to do it. So that's the reason why we were an investor. There were more than one. That is a provincially owned and public wharf, but public wharf doesn't mean a disrupted wharf. It means that it's for more than one organization. It absolutely is, and if other people want to use it, I would expect decency and respect for all users, just like all other wharves. I trust that would be the case. But to come back to the investment, I think that's important to understand that we can't actually do that. We can't do that if the wharf is owned by a person. We have to do that. We can only do that if it's a nonprofit organization. Thank you.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. The only other thing I was going to add is, I know when our CAO was speaking, he said to look in at that wharf, but it would be all the wharfs that may be, and if they're going to go that far as to put in a sign for a, public wharf, maybe they should also look at putting a civic number associated with that sign, because if somebody ever gets hurt, I'd like to see, the ambulance or the fire department, or if somebody does erect a tent on that wharf and you have to get the RCMP down to clear the tent, I'd like them to have a civic number that would be visible as well.
Great point.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions? So seeing none, we will move on to 8I, request for letters of support. Société Bontemps, there's one attachment. I believe Councillor Digdon brought that up last time and mentioned making a motion.
Yes, the only thing I mentioned, with the motion. At least then it gives the chance if some of the other council members are not for it, for supporting that, that they have their chance to speak. So I definitely be willing to make a motion to send a letter of support to Société de Bon Temps.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Surette. All in favor? Any questions? All opposed? Motion carried. So again on I, it's Surette's Island Social Club attachments under the same title as the previous one. So I suppose we can make an attachment, a motion for that.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence for information, number 9. Correspondence from Department of Justice to Modi. This was we didn't find out a whole lot on this. It's a letter from the Minister of Justice, Becky Durham, to both Modi and Argyle about policing concerns. There's a lot of work to be done. And they're got, I think, is 8 or 7 fundamental changes, CAO, I do believe. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And it's still complicated, I will say that much. Yeah, yeah. Any questions on that? Okay, so we'll move on to update SPCA services. There's an attachment. CEO Muse.
The attachment is as detailed as possible on the status, SPCA, correct? Are there any questions or concerns related to that memorandum? I can tell you that since then, I've not received any update from the SPCA on a contract. But we are pursuing judiciously to get clarity on the services and on the contracts.
Councillor Surette.
Thank you. My question was, have you heard anything since the 19th of September?
No.
Since it's a more pressing issue, certainly in my district, with the recent events, we can't just wait and see for very long. And so some of the conversations, I don't know how to heighten the conversations or where they need to be placed, but is there any consideration of if SPCA continues to not answer or not have a service, is there any consideration given to, I don't know, maybe having one enforcement person for all of the Tri-County area, shared by the Tri-County area for enforcement, trained properly with respect to safety and issues? I guess I'm just saying we can't wait too long.
No. Parallel, through you, Mr. Chair, parallel to this delay, we're speaking with the region around alternate forms of service, so we're having those conversations at the same time. Difficulty with that is that it will take some time to do. There may be a gap there. There are some, I believe, the Municipality of Digby does have a service where they have a trained enforcement officer. So there is the possibility of obtaining temporary services from that location until we can sort this all out. There are some alternate forms of services that we are investigating as well. There are some issues. There's one particular issue, yes, in District 9 that I'm fully briefed and aware of, and I can say that the bylaw is being followed very closely around dealing with that situation, and without getting into the details of it, the dog owner is aware of the requirements in order to secure that animal, and there's multiple options being considered at this time.
Councillor Foster.
CAO Muse basically answered my question just now, but I thought it was the municipality of Clare that had a dog catcher or a trained dog control bylaw officer who could provide that service to us, and then they would bill us back.
Right, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that that used to be the case, but my understanding is that Claire is no longer with that service and that they're in the same boat as we.
Okay,
Around,
so-
they were utilizing SPCA.
So a little bit further down the road, municipality of Digby, basically Weymouth, and closer toward Digby, they would be able to provide that? Would they be willing to provide that service? Because it's like Councillor Surratt said, this is not something we can wait for months and months and months because the danger appears to be quite immediate.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if they're willing to do that or able to do that service as of yet. I cannot say that we confirmed that arrangement or that that interest is known at this time. What we did do with the SPCA is they made it very clear that they could no longer deal with what I would call lesser offenses around the dog bylaw. For example, dogs barking or dogs off a leash that aren't fierce or dangerous, because there are dogs that run free that are perfectly harmless. But you know, some people are very fearful of dogs, and there is a dog bylaw that says they should be on a leash or controlled, is what it says, in fact. So those are going to be dealt with by our enforcement officer, usually a warning, you know, do you know this is not, you know, this is contrary to the bylaw. Where we're really concerned about is things that are more serious, like a fierce and dangerous dog or dogs biting. Those two things, you know, really kind of are married in a lot of ways. You don't have to be a biting dog to be a fierce and dangerous, but if you are a biting dog, you're likely a fierce and dangerous dog. And so in those instances, our bylaw is very clear. There are a lot of rules that have to be put in place to make sure that that dog is secured so that they're not a threat to other people. There's also increased fees and potentially fines associated with that. The bylaw is very thorough in that area. The issue we have is that when we get to that point, and if we have to deal with a dog in a way that is less than courteous to the dog, i.e. euthanization or something of that, or sheltering or pulling a dog, we don't have that resource today internally. We would have to get that externally. The SPCA has indicated that they're interested in that process, but their primary role is SPCA. It's the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And so they're certainly going to fit that mandate, and they may be able to assist us where a dog is a problem, but that is still not clear. On that issue in District 9, they have been helpful, but it is not the same arrangement as it was a year ago.
It seems to me that... Is my light on? No. It seems to me that somebody dealing with a or several potentially dangerous and vicious dogs ought to have an adequate means of protection.
Correct.
So I'm thinking the RCMP.
Yes.
I know that there was a situation in Yarmouth a number of years ago where a woman was severely injured. And it was the police who, I think it's the police, who arrived on the scene and took the dog out because it was a threat to them. Plus, it had already severely injured a person. And we hear about these things every once in a while on the news. Not very often, but it does happen. So what about the RCMP? Will they not act in a situation like that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they will. They will act in those areas if they're called upon, if it's escalated to that point. I believe that since this has occurred, that discussion, well, it certainly has, the discussion has been had, and the RCMP is aware and has been briefed on those issues. If it does get to that point, you're quite right to say that the RCMP can be involved, and there's no reason to think that they won't be. I think that they would respond to calls like that. We just, sometimes it doesn't escalate to that point, so we have to, each situation, we have to look at its own merit, and I don't want to comment one way or another whether they were involved in a particular incident recently, but there's certainly an option for us to use for sure.
Thank you. Council Boudreau.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Sonia, a question for our CAO. Alain, aren't we paying the SPCA $29,000 a year for their services?
Not currently, no.
No?
No, that contract's expired, and
Okay.
we have no contract, so we're paying zero.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? So, just from my standpoint, how many calls do you get for vicious dogs in the municipality of Argyle? Is it rampant?
No, we typically go, every year's different. We might have 9 calls in a year for all dog calls. I think that's going up. I think we'd be closer to between 25 and 30. If we're dealing with the higher risk instances, it might be 0 to 5 a year. 5 is the very most I've seen. It's mostly been, 0 to 1. It really depends on the situation. Like, and what I'm trying to talk, when I'm talking about the 0 to 1 or 0 to 5 is the bites and the more serious ones, like the bites and the fierce and dangerous, threatening, more higher risk to residents, would be in that range. Yeah. So it's tough because, how do you get that service? You need the service, but if you're only going to have that many calls, it's difficult to do it just a small group, which is why we're looking at a larger group so that we can collectively, because the collective, there may be 25 to 30 calls a year, and each of those calls can be rather complicated, right? There's a process involved. So in that case, you do have somebody that would probably have a full-time job if it was a
So
larger.
part of the question was, are we putting an extra load on the RCMP here? Or no?
I would say that the load that we put on the RCMP on dog-related issues would be quite low.
Okay.
And to Councillor Foster's point, it could perhaps be even more, depending on the situation. Perhaps, where you do your best to deal with it through the SPCA and your own means. Escalating it to the RCMP is a matter of, sometimes it's a matter of residents actually making that call, complaining to the police about it, and sometimes it's us escalating the RCMP to that level.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I had asked at the last meeting actually to put on the agenda to bring it up at this meeting as far as the SPCA and dogs and stuff like that. But I saw it wasn't on the agenda as far as actually on the agenda, but I knew as soon as we got down to this part, it was going to be on the agenda anyway. Yeah, as far as the RCMP, I honestly don't know how many of them are trained or if they even have the equipment to pick up, vicious dogs or to go after. And then it's not only picking them up, then it's to house them and stuff like that as well. Because there's quite a process there from the time they're picked up to the time you find out what's actually going to happen to this animal or animals at the end. Just wondering through you, if I may ask Alain, our CAO, so would you be able to reach out maybe in the time being on both sides of us to find the nearest agency that could come down if we do have a problem and act on our behalf of the municipality? And then, of course, it's extra money by all means, but if these animals, we have to have some safeguards in place, I believe, for our public. And having said that, if an agency has to come down from away and these animals are deemed, to be very cross, and that any cost involved, sometimes we'd be able to go back to the owners, involved and say, okay, we went through our steps. The dog has been deemed vicious, and we want to recoup our money as well. So just something that we may be able to look at, just so the public knows that we're going to try and at least put some safeguards in place until maybe we have a better picture as to what's going to go on in the long term.
Okay, Thank you. Councilor LeBlanc.
Thank you. Actually, Councilor Digdon brought up exactly what I was going to indicate, is that, looking at a cost of, hiring somebody or contract, and if we have a limited number of incidences of this, then maybe it's better if we go outside, find somebody that, even if there's a retainer fee that has to be paid to have them on standby or call for when the calls do come, or are needed, that we bring them down. And that may be the route that we might want to go. I fully agree. I don't think that the RCMP, I don't want to say they don't want to deal with this, but I think that, the workloads that they have, and, and again, and even the training or the equipment, I'm not sure that, it's maybe at times that they're the best ones to call for this either. So, on a personal note, I mean, it's, I will call myself a responsible dog owner. It's a shame that, there are still those that, don't control their dogs, and that people in the public are put in situations where, there is risk. So it's a shame to see. But again, I think that maybe if we can find somebody on the outside, and even if there's a cost to have them on a retainer basis, that may be the route we might want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Surratt.
More just kind of in agreement with my two councilors who are across from me. Just to say, we talked about Digby, but I'd be curious across the province if we have somebody who would be able to respond within hours if we need to.
Those points have been noted. I've just re-accelerated that discussion. So we'll see where we go, and I hear that it's a priority of this group, and we will push a lot harder to make sure that that occurs the way that the services are provided the way that you wish them to for your community.
Okay, do we have any more questions on that? Okay, seeing none, we will move to 9C, update on light pollution community engagement. There's two attachment, and I will again go to our CAO.
It's, again, through you, it's just questions. I think the memo provides an accurate assessment where we are, and I think that if you wish to give staff additional guidance around the light pollution community, I called it on the agenda, I named it myself community engagement, because we're nowhere near passing a bylaw on this. I think people need to be aware that if they have concerns, this is precisely why we have readings. We go by the speed of which we believe the community needs, and this one needed to slow down. So that's no problem. I think that there are issues. I think the memo addresses some of these issues around the bylaw, and I don't think the bylaw, I don't think anybody would recommend the bylaw the way it is. It has to be changed. If there's any questions or specific questions about the memo, I'm here to answer them.
Warden Albright.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Warden. No, I just wanted to say I really appreciated the next steps, because the memo gave us a lot of information, which there were a lot of questions around, but I like the fact that we do have some next steps. And for those who are, I'm just going to read the next steps so that the public who's out there listening may know what we intend on doing. So the first next step is to attend one-on-one conversations with commercial users, and it's estimated to be completed by October 31st, 2025. No, it won't. Probably. There's still a lot to be done.
Estimated.
I think that's aggressive. Number two, engage. I looked at all of your timelines and thought, But engage in municipal conversations with units with a light pollution bylaw, and there are none in Nova Scotia, as well as dark sky organizations. And then you gave us a estimated completion September 30th, 2025. Number three, present what we heard report to council by November 13th. And then council would consider next steps on further engagement with residents, along with amendments to current state of the bylaw, including its current form, as a bylaw. So I've had some conversations, I've had some really respectful conversations with the residents. I've had messages, I've had emails, and then one-on-one conversations. And there is a lot of uncertainty, and there is a lot of information that is inaccurate out there as well. But I've heard Councillor Digdon say it more than one time, and I agree that this is not about, we're not going to do anything that's going to impede anybody's safety. We do not want to impede safety. It's about light pollution. That's the question that's come to me more than once. Why? Why are we doing this? We have, and I've repeated, we have a dark skies designation that we're looking to protect, as well as light trespass. Those are some of the issues that have come up. It's not about, I feel like, I think the first reading that we put out there was, it felt a little too, it was severe, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, and I'm glad that people are listening. I'm glad that people are listening and paying attention, and that they came back with feedback, because that's how we can work together and move forward. So I appreciate the time that you put in to this memo. It was well explained, and I look forward to our next steps and working with our residents to try and come up with a solution that works for everybody. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you very much. Just jotting down a few notes. Talking about fires. Right off, I do respect and appreciate the designation that we have for the Dark Sky Reserve. I see again where we've been talking, but again here, this time now, what I read, we're talking about a bylaw. I've heard policy, and that also, I believe the difference may be with a bylaw that it's an enforceable, it's in the bylaw, it's enforceable. A policy is just more so guidelines and helping the people, with lights that may be better for their applications than maybe a couple of big bright lights, maybe some other ways to go. The 10 commercial owners, one-on-one, more if needed. I feel as though maybe there will be a certain group or groups come back and say, well, see, typical government. 10 commercial owners, so they picked out the ones that they knew was gonna go with them for this bylaw, and the others didn't get a chance. So I'd like to see a lot more public consultation before this ever comes to fruition, really. I don't know really if this time is if this is even the time of the year for it. And the reason I say that is we're soon going to be getting in a lot of the business owners that I know, and a lot of the plant workers, a lot of the ones that have called me with concerns. Most of the time now, a lot of them are going to be hunting or in the woods or getting ready for lobster season or starting to get into the fishery. I know one thing: if you don't want to see dark skies, don't come around Pubnico when it's lobster time. And that because the boats going out put their what we call their crab lights on, and the boats coming in put their crab lights on. So any given morning, night, you can look out and the bay is pretty well all lit up. Looks like little, pardon me? Exactly, looks like New York. The only thing, I was jotting down what our warden had said, but yes, we wanna look at things, we wanna get it right, but I still don't know if we can do this on our own. And the reason I say that is we can do all we want in this municipality. We can put as many restrictions and that are guidelines for the people that we want. But at the same time, it's not only here that the light pollution is coming from. And I feel as though we're going to have to look at this on a more of a regional approach. Maybe this end of the province from Liverpool down or so, and I'm just using, and on the other side from Digby down, if you actually want to keep it dark skies and that, or work towards keeping it towards a dark sky approach. I personally don't think we can do it on our own, and I personally would not like to see the restrictions put on our residents only. And you have to do this in this municipality, but as soon as you cross the line that way or cross the line that way, they've got no bylaws or policies or anything, and it's a free-for-all. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Surratt.
So when I look at next steps, I agree. I think they're quite ambitious for timelines. And one thing I think that I don't see in the next steps is the word pause, that we're taking a pause on this bylaw. And the fact that it doesn't say that there's a pause for now to really do engagement well, to really kind of, hear what people have to say, is a little bit misleading, because it appears like by November 13th, we'll be having another discussion, maybe second reading. And I don't think, from what I'm hearing in conversations up to now, we're definitely nowhere near that. By November, by December, by January. And I do know, I have seen there's a petition out right now, a public petition being circulated, people are signing. With concerns about the bylaw, I think that's another piece we need to consider, what people are saying. I also have had commercial, mainly fishing industry, who've come to me. When I read the bylaw, to me, there's some exemptions for those folks. But for others, when they're reading it, they're not seeing that. So I mean, again, I think the word pause needs to be in there. A real clear message that we're not going to be doing second reading by the end of November, and we're going to be working really hard to get it right. If it even goes forward, depending on where we land.
Thank you. Councilor LeBlanc.
Thank you. Just to go along with actually both councilors in regards to what they've indicated. I as well, I've had calls from industry in regards to it. I've had concerns. And the more we've looked at this and discussed this, and then, and hearing what the public response is to it, I've sat and thought about this, and I think if we go with a bylaw that does not include at least the town of Yarmouth and the municipality of Yarmouth included in this together, then I think we're going in the wrong direction. I think we need all, at minimal, those two along with us on board in regards to a bylaw of that nature. But even thinking of that beyond, the next question comes about, do we need a bylaw? And maybe what we need, instead of a bylaw out there with the impression that we're forcing people to do this, is maybe just look at an educational campaign and push the educational side of things in regards to, hey, do you know this or what, and talk about the lighting and encourage people to look at doing that. The old saying, you get a lot more with honey than you do with vinegar, right? And maybe that's the case in this situation. So, yeah, with the next steps, I don't think we're nowhere near that. I really think if we are going to, if it's this council's wish to proceed with a bylaw on this, I think we're quite a ways away of actually putting together something that I think is going to be acceptable. So anyways, thank you.
Any more questions? So I will read a line from Alain's report here. And it says, "It is in my opinion that the first reading of the light pollution bylaw as approved by me was premature." I think we all agree with that statement, Alain. And being premature, it would allude to the fact that I think we should repeal the first reading. It basically is saying it's flawed. So having said that, what I get from the community, especially the businesses, is that there's some big ones too. Some guys have been here in business for a long time. There's quite a few. They're saying, are you gonna, you know, pinch my business, push my business aside for one smaller business, a growing business? So they make a good point. Is it fair, the way it's going on for them? They do not understand that we're not trying to force them to do anything. However, we need to educate and we need to, more than pause, I really do believe we need to repeal that first reading, because again, if we admit it's flawed, then why even have it there? So that's all I wanted to add to this. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. So, I guess we will move on to financial requests. There's none?
No.
Do we have any agenda topics for next meeting? Councillor Madden.
This is not for next meeting. With council's permission, I'd like to discuss something that Councillor Digdon mentioned earlier about the 911 sign for Lower Yellowbrook or Wharf. So I Googled the map, and I knew this, but I've never thought about it till tonight. That road leading to that wharf is called Beach Lane. Half a kilometer further, where Danny and Winnie, Gilles and Denise live, is called Beach Lane. And I think this is an in-house thing that we do with our mapper to investigate that.
I can actually, I feel like I can answer that question. I believe that the name Beach Lane on that road is an incorrect name. I believe the name, I don't know what the name is because it's one of those roads that the province had in their records for so long, I'm not certain. But I do know that when you look at property online or some sort of, not property online, but like Viewpoint and other mapping, it indicates Beach Lane, and it's on the wrong road. It should be on Danny and Winnie's road.
So I'm just thinking for emergency purposes,
yeah,
I don't want to go down
you're-
that road. I would know myself because of being in the area.
Yeah,
But-
so I'd have to look in, I'm gonna look into this deeper because I think the 911 issue is a very good one. The late David Sudet had a fish processing plant right
Correct.
there.
Correct.
And my suspicion is that actually had a civic address because it was a facility. I could be wrong, but my first step is to investigate whether or not that happened because we issue civic addresses. And we would do that on a road that had a name. So I think it's a great point that you raise around, it's not just about the signage, it's also about the civic numbering, because if that is a public wharf or if there's somebody on that road that
That
gets
is part
hurt.
of the driveway, that's part of the driveway
That's it.
at the
So-
fishing plant. But,
Yeah, yeah, okay, I will investigate
That's
that.
something that we do in-house, and we should look at it.
Just for the record, I think that is a topic that is addressed at that issue. I will combine that with it, so you may not see that as a separate issue. You will see it as a civic numbering follow-up. Okay?
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. And again, I don't want to think that I second that motion this evening for that one wharf. This is all the wharfs in the municipality. Yeah, but again, that's, and that, again, that's if TRR or whoever sees fit to even put that sign up, those signs up, I should say. And the only other thing I want to say here this evening, when I said the fishermen, we have a captain down home, a lady, so my apologies for any fishers or fishing women that's listening. We have a Captain Thorburn Surratt, and that she's a female. She's all lady and she's all captain. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so, Celia Muse.
Oh, just waiting on question period.
Oh, okay. Any question period? Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are.
Okay.
Question 1, what is the status of the sidewalks in municipalities of Argyle? The answer to that question is both studies were issued in late 2024, I believe. One of them was funded, one of them wasn't. We have yet to receive a final report for the Tusket and the Plymouth pathways. We have received a draft report from the Tuscan pathway, there was work that needed to be done to it. So it came out like the cost of it was high. So there's some questions that we had with TIR around the overpass that we have to get from TIR in order to finalize that. So that's where that one is. Plymouth had public engagement done, as you are aware. But I do not have the result of that as of this time. I know that Kyle Boudreau has, again, aggressively pursued that. I will say that both of those they both committed to finish the work by April. So we're not April. So the basis upon which would be, okay, here's what it is, Class B estimates, and then the next step would be to take a look at the funding models that will work with those agreements. Those agreements, those studies are there so that we can go after money to help with the possible construction of sidewalks. That is the update I have on that at this time.
I was talking to Natalie and Kyle yesterday, and they said, basically, I quote what you just said.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And they're disappointed at the lack of speed. Yeah.
One of which, certainly happened within the deadline. The Tuscan one was faster. We just have a lot of questions we have to iron out. That one's a lot more complicated. The Plymouth option's a lot less complicated. So what happened there was some staff turnover on the consultant side. It's just difficult. So we're dealing with that, and of course so are they. Question 2, has the independent lawyer hired by the municipality started investigating the 16 conflict of interest allegations yet? I don't know that he started. Oh, sorry, there's another question there. I don't know that he started yet. I'm not involved. I think that the purpose of which would be to complete by the month of December is what I understood. I could be wrong there. I think it's Stuart McKelvey, the firm, that has been engaged, but outside of that, I have no other information. And I just gave the name of the firm, so that was the other question. Third question, if the municipality has funded upgrades with our tax dollars to upgrade this wharf in Eelbrook, then the municipality needs to allow the public to use it. Is the warden saying the public cannot use this wharf? I can't speak for you,
I'll answer
warden, but I don't think that's what you said.
I'm pretty sure I didn't say that the public couldn't use the wharf, and I'm just going to clarify because we tend to know how these things go. My question was around why. And now that we're looking at it, if it is the ARA group, most of the people in that group are from the area. They know where the wharf is. So even, that makes me wonder, why do they need a sign to know where the wharf is? I question motivation. So people can use the wharf whenever they want, and I do not want to be quoted as saying that I said they cannot use the wharf. Final answer.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and close off on a good note here this evening.
There's more questions.
there's some questions.
Oh, well, don't know.
Hold that thought.
Yeah, I'm going to hold the thought.
I mean,
Go
you-
ahead.
you-
Sorry, you go ahead with your questions first, please.
Sorry, I'm just trying to follow the agenda. Okay, sure. Please clarify if this is Dion's Wharf or a public wharf. I think we clarified that. It is a public wharf. Also, please explain why my tax dollars are being used to upgrade this wharf. Can I launch my boat there? Can I swim there? I think the answer is, can I launch my boat there? It's a public wharf. I think our investment was for it to be public. I know that in the discussions with Nolan and his interest in it, it was intended to be public all along. There was no discussion of it being a sole user. Can I swim there? Can if you want, I guess. I'm not in charge of the water. I
We have
don't
no
think
jurisdiction.
we don't have any jurisdiction. And there's a lot of places that people can go swimming. A lot of wharves are that location. Explain why the tax dollars are being used to upgrade the wharf. It's a public wharf. It's a decision of council. It was for economic development and other purposes. It's not for me to explain that. So as a public or private wharf, it's a public wharf.
I think we know the motivation.
These are all from the same.
Shocking.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, if there's comments, I'm not repeating them. If there's a question, I'm stating them. That's a comment. How much money has Argyle spent on this wharf? The answer is $4,000 of municipal tax dollars were applied towards the public wharf back in 2015. Yes, 2015, $4,000. I think the total, I don't know what the total cost is. I know it's at least 3 times that, but that would be a question for the contractor who was Nolan and another excavating company. So FOIPOP is not required for that information. That is open and public. And that is the end of the questions. And I apologize, sir.
Councillor Digdon.
If I may, no apologies needed. The only other thing I'd like to say here this evening, you don't think of water when you have water in your well. I can't say enough about the comments I've been receiving from the public for our CAO and his staff, what they have been doing for our residents out there. The provincial government with their water, their drinkable water, the non-potable water here, the boys have been going 5 days a week. And that 3 tanks they have is geared up on at least one trailer that I see, and they're going nonstop. And having said, so I'd really like to thank the staff, Alain, his staff, and I'd also like to thank some of, I guess, the public and some businesses for helping these people out as well. We have Paul's Water Service. We have the brewery down home, Boatskeg, offering the loan of some tanks for people. We have private residents that have all kinds of water, letting other residents come over with their pots and that, or whatever the case may be. And I honestly think this is the type of municipality that I like to live in. When things are, when going gets tough, tough gets going, and everyone backs each other up. And that's what I'll end the meeting on here this evening for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we have no in-camera meetings, so I guess we can adjourn.